Today we are talking on flocking together as victorious, triumphant eagles. And I want us to turn our Bibles to the book of, I'll first of all read the book of James and chapter 5. I will read from verse 7. James chapter 5 from verse 7. It says, "Be patient therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waited for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receiveth the early and the latter rain. Be ye also patient, established your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth near." Verse 9. "Grudge not one against another, brethren, lest you be condemned. Behold, the judge standeth by the door. Take ye, brethren, the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord for an example of suffering, affliction, and of patience." Let me jump quickly to verse 13. "Is any amongst you afflicted? Let him pray. Is any merry? Let him sing psalms. Is any sick amongst you? Let him call for the elders of the church, and let them pray over him, anointing with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer of faith shall save the sick, and the Lord shall raise them up. And if he had committed sins, they shall be forgiven him." Verse 16. "Confess your fault one to another, and pray for one another, that you may be healed. The effectual fervent prayer of the righteous man availeth much." Elijah was a man subject to like passions as we are. He prayed earnestly that it might not rain, and it rained not on the earth for the space of 3 years and 6 months. And he prayed again, and the heaven gave rain, and the earth brought forth her fruit. Brethren, if any of you do err from the truth, and one converted him, let him know that he which converted the sinner from the error of his ways shall save his soul from death, and shall hide a multitude of sins. Now, when I was reading the book of Genesis chapter 49, and I read the book of Romans chapter 16, and I read the book of James chapter 5, I was troubled in my heart. You know the reason why? I discovered that in every true move of God, there is always a false move underneath. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Every time God set out to do something, every time God raised a group of people, every time God begins to move in the midst of the people of God, the devil has a dangerous way of gathering some people, recruiting some people, and getting some people on his own side. And you saw the example of that when Jesus raised 12 apostles. Jesus said, "Have I not chosen you 12, and one of you is a devil?" You understand what I'm trying to say here? Jesus chose 12 disciples, and one of them became a devil. And this is the problem. With all the anointing, with all the power of God, with all the grace of God, with the hand of the Lord upon Jesus, with the measureless anointing upon Jesus, if Jesus gathered 12 people, and one of them failed and one of them became a devil, can you imagine somebody like myself or somebody like one pastor there gathering 20 people, or gathering 100 people, or gathering 1,000 people? How many people can become devils there? And that is why the first warning I want to sound to the church of God today, and to the people of God and the faithful ones in this ministry, is that you should not focus on the crowd. That is the first thing I want to say to you here. Don't focus on the crowd. Don't focus on the multitude of people that are in the church. Don't focus on the number of people. Don't focus on how many cars, how many people. Don't focus on the choir that sang this morning. Don't focus on anything. If there is anything, first of all, you have to understand today, is that every one of us, we need to labor to have a personal, close, intimate, real relationship with Jesus. That is the first important thing that every one of us must understand today. You don't know the person that is sitting beside you. You don't know what that person has chosen to do. You don't know the choices that he or she has made. You don't know how far he or she has made up his or her mind to go with God. You don't know whether that person has the intention of making a wrong decision and going the wrong way. You cannot determine what is going to happen to somebody beside you. but you can determine how far you will go with God. Look at your neighbor and tell him, you cannot stop me. I cannot force you to make a decision, but I can stop you from stopping me. That is one power every one of us have. I cannot stop mommy from making her decision. She's my wife, she's mommy, but she has her choice to make. That's what I'm trying to say here today. No man can force another person to serve God if the will to serve God is not there. No man can impose commitment on another person. No man can impose consecration upon another person. Nobody can force somebody else to serve God if the desire, the will, and the commitment to serve God is not there. And listen to me, ladies and gentlemen, the problem with many of us in the church, especially those of us who are leaders and pastors, is that what we always count is the number of years that people have been in the church. But what God always counts is the heart with which people are following him in the church. Is somebody getting what I'm saying here today? And that is why you discover that somebody might just be 1 year or 2 years in the church. His level of growth and commitment is superseding somebody who has been in the church for the past 10 or 20 years. And if you are not very careful, you are likely to focus on the historic aspect of somebody's life, somebody's faith, and forget the authentic relationship that person has with God. And that is exactly what matters with God. You remember that the apostles of Jesus, the 12 of them, started with Jesus himself. They saw him physically, they heard with him physically, they put their hands together in the same place and everything. And Jesus himself said, one of you that had dipped his hand into the plate with me is going to betray me. Ask your neighbor, do you have the tendency to betray Jesus? Ask your neighbor. Do you have that tendency? Do you have the intention? Do you have the heart? Do you have the ability? Can you do it? If you have the option to do it, if you have the opportunity to do it, if you were alive in the days of Jesus, what will you do with Jesus? That is one important question every one of us must answer today. And that is one key issue that God will want me to address in the congregation of the people of God today. Listen to me, ladies and gentlemen. You discover that Jesus sounded the note of warning. He told them, he said, one of you will betray me. If I were Judas, the fact that Jesus sounded a note of warning was enough to make Judas to change his mind. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Jesus went ahead to say, one of you will betray me. And he said, that person that will betray me, it would have been better for that person if he had not been born. And Judas still went ahead and betrayed him. You understand what I'm trying to say? Judas still went ahead and betrayed him, despite the fact that Jesus sounded a note of warning. Despite the fact that he gave heed unto the people and he spoke the word of God to them, and he gave Judas enough opportunity to change his mind, but his heart was made up. And that is why I want to bring two people to you today. I want to bring the case of David to you and the case of King Saul. And I will also bring the case of Judas to you and the case of Peter. Two of them in the Old Testament, two of them in the New Testament, so that you will have the opportunity to judge what I want to tell you. There are two types of sins. There are two types of errors. There are two types of mistakes that people make in the church, that people make in their relationship, in their walking with God. Number one is the one that I call the heart error, the heart sins, the heart mistakes. The second one is the one I call the head error, the head mistakes. Get it set? Two sets of mistakes, two sets of sins, two sets of errors that people commit in the church. The first one is the heart mistakes. Mistakes that comes from the heart. Sins that comes from the heart. The second one is the one that comes from the head. Listen to me. Every sin that comes from the head is an emotional sin. Are you getting my point? But every sin that comes from the heart comes by inspiration. There is a flow. There is a flow. Now that flow could either be from God or from the devil. And because God is not a God of error, then you know that a different spirit had come in. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. One day David rose up. The Bible made us to understand that it came to pass, David, in those days when kings used to go to battle, David was walking upon his upstairs in his story building and he was enjoying himself. How many of you agree with me that David had no intention to sin against God the day he did it? You know, it was a sudden thing. David was just enjoying himself. Maybe he had pocketed himself and he was just singing and doing something, and suddenly he saw a woman that was bathing, and the Bible said the woman was a beautiful woman, and the eyes of David made his head to begin to spin. What a beautiful woman this woman is this. What? And you know, it was a sin of imagination. It was a sin of the head. Are you getting what I'm trying to say? And David began to fantasize in himself, if I can get this woman, after all I'm the king. And David began to inquire, who is that woman there? And they said, her name is Bathsheba. David was acting by impulse. There was, you know, there was something that was pushing him in the flesh. Everything that David did, he did it in the flesh. Are you getting my point? The problem was that he did not consider the consequence of what he was doing. But David actually, in his heart of heart, the only thing he wanted to do was to enjoy himself. How many of you know that? That was the intention of David. He just wanted to enjoy his body, enjoy himself, feel free, and have a relationship with that woman. And after doing that, that was the end of it. David never planned to harm Bathsheba. He never thought of killing Uriah. He never planned to do that. But the problem with Ed sin is that once it starts like that, emotions continue to push you and push you and push you until you go beyond the level that you have set for yourself. Are you getting what I'm trying to say?